It was a day like any other when I first noticed something was amiss. The office hummed with the usual activity, but my instincts told me to look closer. As I sat at my desk, engrossed in the preparation of the crucial report for the board, I caught a glimpse of my manager, a figure of authority cloaked in a facade of confidence. He was rifling through the documents in the shared workspace, his eyes darting nervously, ensuring no one was watching. My heart raced as I realized what was happening. He was taking my report, the culmination of weeks of hard work and late nights. The report was not just a collection of data, it was my voice, my contribution to the company's future, and he was stealing it right out from under me. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. How could he do this? I had trusted him to guide me, to mentor me, and yet here he was, prepared to undermine my efforts for his gain. I wanted to confront him immediately, to shout and demand he return what was rightfully mine, but I hesitated, the weight of the consequences crashing down on me. The board was set to meet in just a few hours, and if he presented my report as his own, the repercussions would be devastating, not just for me but for the integrity of our work. I had to think strategically, I couldn't act rashly. As I watched him slip the report into his briefcase, my mind raced through possible scenarios. What if I told someone? Would they believe me? Would I risk my job over this? The fear of being dismissed as a disgruntled employee loomed large. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my thoughts. This was not just about me, it was about the truth. I had to find a way to expose his theft without putting myself in jeopardy. The clock ticked down as I grappled with my options. I could either let this injustice unfold, or I could take a stand. The tension in the room grew heavier with each passing second, and I knew I was running out of time. My entire future rested on the decisions made in the next few moments. I felt a fire ignite within me, a determination to reclaim what was mine and to protect the integrity of the work we had all put our hearts into. The stakes had never been higher, and I was ready to fight for what I believed in, even if it meant facing my manager head-on. With resolve, I made my decision. I would not allow him to get away with this. I slowly rose from my seat, my mind set on the confrontation that awaited, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, knowing that I needed to act swiftly. The report was nearly complete. All that was left was to finalize the presentation that would showcase our findings to the board. My fingers danced over the keyboard as I meticulously reviewed the data, ensuring every statistic was accurate and every conclusion justified. This report was my chance to shine, to prove myself in a company that hungered for innovation and efficiency. As I compiled the last sections, I reflected on the importance of the report. It wasn't just a formality, it was a roadmap for the company's future. The board was eager for fresh insights and strategies that would propel us ahead of our competitors. I had poured my heart and soul into this project, and I wanted to deliver something that would leave a lasting impact. I envisioned the board's faces lighting up with excitement as I presented our findings, a stark contrast to the shadow my manager cast over my work. I double-checked the graphs, ensuring they were not only visually engaging but also conveyed the message we needed to communicate. Each chart represented countless hours of analysis, and I couldn't let that go to waste. The project had started as a team effort, but it felt increasingly personal as I realized how much was at stake. I had to ensure my contributions were recognized, especially now that I knew my manager's intentions. Time slipped away as I immersed myself in the details. The office around me faded into a blur, the noise of conversations drowned out by the pounding of my heart. I could still see my manager's face, the way he had sneered when he thought no one was looking. It fueled my determination to make this report shine brighter than any of his past presentations. I wanted to prove that my work was deserving of the board's attention, not his petty theft. As the clock crept closer to the meeting time, I felt a mixture of dread and anticipation. I had to prepare not just the report but also my defense. If my manager dared to present my work as his own, I had to be ready to confront him, to show the board the truth. I envisioned how the room would react, the murmurs of disbelief when they learned of his deceit. In the last minutes before the meeting, I printed out copies of the report, ensuring each page was perfect. My hands trembled as I stacked them neatly, a tangible representation of my hard work and dedication. I couldn't let my manager's actions overshadow everything I had accomplished. I had to be strong, to stand up for myself and for the integrity of our team's efforts. With the report in my hands, I steeled myself for what lay ahead. The board was waiting, and I would not let my fear dictate the outcome. I would present not just data, but my unwavering commitment to our work. As I stepped out of my office, I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me, but I was ready to face whatever challenges awaited. I was prepared to reclaim my voice in a room full of influential figures, and I wouldn't back down without a fight. As I entered the boardroom, the atmosphere felt charged, a palpable tension hanging in the air. My heart raced, but I pushed my fears aside, determined to reclaim my narrative and ensure the truth was heard. The long, polished table was filled with the board members, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. My manager stood at the head of the table, exuding an air of confidence that was almost palpable. He smiled, but there was a glimmer of something darker lurking behind his eyes, a hint of arrogance that only fueled my resolve. He began his presentation with flair, detailing the report's highlights, weaving a narrative that painted him as the architect of our success. I clenched my fists, biting my tongue as he spoke, knowing full well that the insights he was presenting were mine, the culmination of sleepless nights and relentless dedication. The board listened intently, occasionally nodding, seemingly captivated by his delivery. As he navigated through the slides, my mind raced with the impending questions from the board. Would they see through his facade? Would they question the authenticity of the data? I had prepared for this moment, rehearsing in my mind how I would respond to any inaccuracies he might present. The stakes were higher than ever, and I knew I had to remain calm and collected. The manager transitioned to a particularly complex graph, and I saw my opportunity. As he concluded his overview, I raised my hand, my voice steady despite the tremor in my heart. "Excuse me, but I believe there are some details that require clarification." The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to me, the tension shifting palpably. My manager's expression darkened, but he quickly masked it with a smile. "Of course, let's address any questions you might have." His tone was cordial, but I could sense the underlying irritation. I took a deep breath, recalling the meticulous preparation I had done. The data presented in this graph, while compelling, lacks the context that was crucial in our earlier discussions. It's important to note that the conclusions drawn here do not reflect the comprehensive analysis we undertook as a team. The nuances of our findings were lost in this presentation. I watched as the board members exchanged glances, their intrigue piqued by my interjection. The manager shifted uncomfortably, but he quickly regained his composure. "I appreciate your input, but the data remains valid and..." I interrupted him, feeling the adrenaline course through my veins. With all due respect, the interpretation of our findings is what truly matters. It's not just about numbers, it's about the story they tell. I believe it's essential for the board to understand the full scope of what we discovered, not just the highlights. The board members leaned in, clearly interested in the unfolding drama. I could see their expressions change as they began to realize the underlying tension. The manager's confidence started to waver, and I felt a surge of empowerment. It was my moment to shine, to reclaim my voice and the integrity of my work. "I have the full report here, and I believe it would be beneficial for the board to see the comprehensive analysis that supports our findings," I continued, my voice rising with conviction. The manager shot me a glare, one filled with both anger and desperation. But I pressed on, buoyed by the support I sensed from the board. "I am more than willing to explain the data and answer any questions that arise." The atmosphere shifted, and I could feel the board's attention fully on me now. I had turned the tide, and the manager could do little but watch as I laid out the intricate details of my work. The questions began to flow from the board, each one an opportunity for me to demonstrate not only my knowledge but also my commitment to the project. As I navigated through the inquiries, I felt a sense of justice begin to unfurl within me. I was no longer the victim of my manager's deceit. I was a champion of my own narrative, and I wouldn't let anyone take that away from me. The manager's facade crumbled with each question, and I could see the doubt creeping into the minds of the board members. My heart soared as I continued to hold my ground, determined to expose the truth and reclaim my rightful place within the company. The atmosphere in the boardroom was electric, tension crackling like static in the air. With each question posed by the board members, I could feel the weight of their scrutiny bearing down on my manager. They began to pick apart his presentation, their inquiries growing increasingly pointed. "Can you clarify the discrepancies in the data presented?" one board member asked, leaning forward with an intensity that mirrored my own. "This projection seems overly optimistic compared to previous reports. How do you account for such a variance?" I watched as my manager's mask of confidence slipped just a fraction. The smile that had initially graced his lips faltered, replaced with a hint of irritation. He stammered, attempting to justify the numbers, but it was clear that the cracks were beginning to show. "While I understand your concerns," he replied, his voice strained, "the projections are based on..." His words trailed off as he searched for a more convincing argument, one that would hold up under the board's critical gaze. I seized the moment, my heart pounding as I leaned in. If I may add, the context of our analysis is crucial here. The assumptions made in the projections do not align with the actual figures we compiled together. The nuances we discussed as a team have been overlooked. The board members exchanged glances, their interest piqued. I could see a flicker of realization in their eyes as if they were beginning to connect the dots. The manager's face flushed with frustration, but he quickly masked it with a forced smile, trying to regain control of the narrative. I appreciate your insight, but I believe the report clearly outlines the rationale behind those numbers, he countered, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. Another board member interjected, but how do you justify this sudden change in direction? It feels as if the report lacks the depth we expect from our team. Can you explain why such critical details were omitted? The manager's composure was crumbling. I could sense a shift in the room, a collective doubt beginning to swirl around him. I felt emboldened as the board's scrutiny intensified. Each question they posed was another thread unraveling the web of deceit he had woven around my work. He faltered again, glancing at me with a mixture of anger and desperation. I assure you, the data is valid and the conclusions are sound. I couldn't let him divert their attention any longer, but is it really? I have the complete analysis here, which outlines our methodology and the discussions we had leading up to these conclusions. It's vital that the board understands the full context before making any decisions based on this report. I gestured toward the stack of papers I had brought with me, each page a testament to my dedication and hard work. The tension in the room shifted, and I could see the board members leaning in, intrigued by the unfolding drama. My manager's confidence was waning, and for the first time I felt the scales tipping in my favor. Perhaps it would be beneficial to review the full report together, I suggested, my voice steady and clear. The board members nodded, seemingly eager to delve deeper. The manager's eyes narrowed, but the fight was leaving him. He knew he was losing ground. I pressed on, ready to explain the intricacies of my work, to shed light on the truths he had tried to obscure. The board was listening, and I was determined to ensure they heard my voice above all else. As I laid out the details of the report, the manager sat in silence, the facade of confidence crumbling with each passing moment. I had seized my moment, and I was not letting go. I was fighting not just for my work, but for my place in a company that had almost been stolen from me. The tide had turned, and I was ready to claim victory. The room buzzed with an intensity that felt almost electric as I continued to present my findings. The board members, once captivated by my manager's facade, were now fully engaged, leaning in to listen to the truth I had uncovered. Each question they posed cut deeper into the layers of deception he had woven, pulling back the curtain on his theft of my work. As I navigated through the comprehensive analysis, I noticed the shifting expressions on the faces of the board members. Their brows furrowed in concern, their eyes narrowed in scrutiny. My manager's confidence was evaporating like mist in the morning sun, revealing the reality beneath, a reality I was determined to expose. With each passing moment, I felt more empowered. The adrenaline coursing through my veins fueled my determination. I was no longer the quiet employee overshadowed by my manager's arrogance. I was a force to be reckoned with, reclaiming my narrative and my rightful place in this company. Finally, as I concluded my presentation, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had laid bare the truth and fought fiercely for my work. The board members exchanged glances, their expressions now filled with contemplation rather than skepticism. They could no longer ignore the discrepancies that had surfaced, nor the implications of my manager's actions. The moment the meeting adjourned, I felt a mix of trepidation and exhilaration. My heart raced as I stepped out of the boardroom, the weight of the world lifting off my shoulders. My manager, once so imposing, now seemed diminished, a shadow of his former self. I could see the anger boiling beneath his surface, but I stood tall, knowing that the truth had won this round. In the days that followed, the repercussions of the meeting rippled through the office. My manager was called in for a series of meetings with upper management. Whispers filled the air, rumors of potential disciplinary action, perhaps even termination, floated through the halls. I had watched my hard work almost slip away, but I had taken a stand, and now justice was unfolding. As I settled back into my routine, a sense of pride filled me. I had fought for what was right, not just for myself but for the integrity of our work. The experience had changed me. I was no longer an underdog in the shadows but a determined advocate for truth. The board's decision came a week later. My manager was let go, the theft of my report ultimately leading to his downfall. As I stood in the office, I felt a sense of justice wash over me. I had reclaimed my narrative, and I wouldn't let anyone take it away from me again. In the aftermath, I received recognition for my dedication and hard work. The board members expressed their appreciation for my commitment to the project, and I was invited to present my findings at the upcoming industry conference. It was a moment of vindication, a chance to showcase my work on a larger platform. Reflecting on the ordeal, I realized that sometimes standing up for yourself and confronting injustice can lead to unexpected outcomes. I had learned the importance of believing in my work and the power of my voice. The experience had been challenging, but it shaped me into a stronger advocate for my contributions and those of my team. As I prepared for the conference, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready to share my insights and the story behind my work with a wider audience. I had faced the storm, and now I was ready to shine. With my report in hand and my heart full of determination, I stepped onto the stage, ready to reclaim my voice and inspire others. I knew this was just the beginning of my journey, and I was excited for what lay ahead. I had fought for my place and won, and I would continue to advocate for the truth in all my endeavors. The stakes had never been higher, but the rewards of standing firm in my convictions were immeasurable. As the audience listened intently, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I had not only reclaimed my narrative but had also paved the way for others to do the same. The lessons learned from my ordeal would resonate far beyond the boardroom, inspiring a culture of integrity and transparency in our workplace. This was my moment, and I was ready to seize it. I would continue to stand tall, advocate for truth, and ensure that justice prevailed in all my future endeavors. As the applause echoed through the room, I couldn't help but smile. I had fought hard for this moment, and I was ready to embrace every opportunity that lay ahead. I would not just be a voice, I would be a beacon of integrity in a world that often blurred the lines between right and wrong. The journey had transformed me, and I was ready to take on whatever challenges awaited. I had found my strength in adversity, and I would carry that with me into the future. The end of this chapter marked the beginning of a new one, and I was eager to see where it would lead. I had faced the storm, emerged victorious, and now I was ready to soar. The journey was far from over, but I felt a sense of peace knowing I had stood up for myself and my work. I wouldn't back down, and I would continue to fight for what was right, no matter the obstacles ahead. As I walked off the stage, I knew I had made my mark, and I was ready to embrace the future with open arms. Now, more than ever, I understood the importance of standing up for oneself and fighting for what is right. My voice mattered, and I would ensure it was heard loud and clear. I had faced the darkness and emerged into the light, ready to inspire others to do the same. My journey was just beginning, and I was ready to forge my path with courage and conviction. In that moment, I realized the greatest victories often come from the fiercest battles fought within. Inscrevisi no canal e adив o sininho.